Exactly 1 year ago today, I posted this video where I said, trainer battles were one of the weakest points of the original Legends Arceus, so I would love to see Game Freak improve that aspect in this new game. Just imagine sending out your Pokemon and instead of engaging in the typical turn-based battle, you can actually control your partner in real time to dodge enemy attacks, while looking for the opportunity to hit them back with your own moves. I don't think Pokemon would ever get rid of turn-based battles in the main games, but Legends feels like a perfect opportunity for Game Freak to test the waters with new types of gameplay. Well, at least I got one prediction right. This is everything you missed in the first gameplay trailer for Pokémon Legends Z-A. We begin with a cinematic shot of our new protagonist, and like most Pokemon games, you can choose between two characters, with both of them looking a bit familiar. The male protagonist seems to bear a striking resemblance to Kalos's own Professor Sycamore, and because this game seems to take place after the events of X and Y, could even literally be Sycamore's son. The female protagonist, on the other hand, I'm a bit more confused with, as some people claim she looks like Grace, the original X and Y protagonist's mom. Personally though, I feel she looks a bit more like Lyra from Heart Gold Soul Silver, with the hairstyle and hat color matching almost perfectly. And as you'll soon see, this game has plenty more tributes to Johto. Overall, I'm a big fan of both of these characters. Their jackets in particular look really sick. Big fan of the green design, because, you know, ZA is all about green. But I'm a bit confused by the logo on the back, because it doesn't seem to be the redevelopment company logo, but it looks oddly familiar. If any of you guys know, drop it in the comments below. But next we get to see the new and improved Lumiose City. And though some fans were still skeptical if this entire game could actually take place within it, this trailer finally confirms that without a doubt, as we see wild Pokemon roaming the streets and coexisting with the people. But perhaps the biggest question anyone had regarding this game, does it take place in the past or future? Well, actually it might just be the present, because even though there's a lot of new technology around, it's been almost 12 years since Pokemon X and Y, meaning this game could be taking place now, or at least in the Pokemon equivalent of 2025. But for anyone who predicted the game would take place in the future, not the past, kudos to you, because they really had me fooled. Regardless, this version of Lumiose is oozing with advanced holographic technology everywhere you turn. But most importantly, it's used to contain wild Pokemon inside of these wild zones that are at the center of Lumiose's whole urban redevelopment plan. Before this trailer, a popular theory suggested that these 5 circles we saw on the Lumiose map could be like mini wild areas where Pokemon thrive. That's almost exactly what we got, except these wild zones aren't just limited to the 5 circles, as a bit later we see one of the zones is a sectioned off part of the street, and another one even carries on up to the rooftops. Gotta say, that's a bold choice, risking your life like that for a frickin' Flaffy, but respect. Although most of the wild Pokemon shown in the trailer appear to be within these wild zones, there are a few shots that show groups of Pokemon also chilling in the main parts of the city, like these Trubbish loitering in the alleys, and even this Patrat in a construction site. Patrat was actually one of the few Pokemon we still couldn't catch in any of the Pokemon Switch games. Maybe we'll see the rest of the ones missing. A few of the other wild zones we see showcase desert areas, ponds of water, and even the canals of Lumiose. But I gotta say, I'm a bit underwhelmed by the variety. I mean, looking through the map of Lumiose on the official site, the different sectors of the city all look a little too similar to each other, which was my main concern when we first learned this whole game would take place within one city. There does at least seem to be a good diversity of actual Pokemon though, so maybe the full game will prove me otherwise. Anyway, next up we have the reveal of the Starter Pokémon. Another hotly debated topic for this game, and though many fans were split on whether it just be the Kalos starters again, or a mixed bunch like we had in the previous Legends game, I don't think anyone expected there to be 2 starters from the same region.
Yeah! 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 Let's go! That's what I'm talking about! That's what I'm talking about! We manifested it! We manifested it!
Personally, I'd been advocating for Chikorita from the very start, so I'm happy to see her finally get some time in the spotlight. But I'm not gonna lie, 2 Johto starters is a bit weird, and I definitely would have preferred if they were each from different regions. But with Legends Arceus having different evolutions for their starters, I'm most curious to see what the final forms of these 3 could be. or even if they might just keep their original final forms and gain Mega Evolutions instead. Some keen viewers caught a glimpse of Chikorita having the move Disarming Voice, which it didn't previously learn, at least in Scarlet and Violet. I'm not saying this confirms a grass and fairy type Mega Meganium or anything, but it is interesting. Next, we get to see some of the other new characters we'll meet on this journey, some of which may look very familiar. In fact, he doesn't just look familiar, this literally is AZ. You know, the old hobo we battled at the end of X and Y, the 3,000 years guy. I'm sure you're all more than familiar with him, but just in case, this 9-foot tall and lookalike is actually the old king of Kalos, who created and fired the ultimate weapon in order to revive the beloved Floette he lost during the war. This ended up granting him and Floette eternal life, so they're both literally over 3,000 years old, hence why they're still around in Legends Z-A. Though he finally seems to have cleaned up a bit, and interestingly now using a cane. This led some people to think that AZ is getting older now, maybe finding some way to stop his immortality, but I think it's more likely that he's just using a cane because of his crazy height. Because at least in real life, really tall people struggle with everyday things like walking. I mean, I feel bad just looking at how uncomfortable he looks in this tiny chair. And though at the end of X and Y, this old man sort of redeemed himself, I just can't shake this feeling that he'll be making an even greater sacrifice in this game. I mean, how else are we finally gonna get AZ's Floette? But for now, all we know is that since the events of X and Y, he now owns a hotel, which is where we'll get to meet one of our new rivals. Their names at least seem to be purely references to the setting of this game, with Urbane of course coming from Urban, and Tawny coming from Towny. Which rival you get depends on which protagonist you pick at the beginning, and it seems to be the opposite gender of the character you pick, which makes me wonder if there might be a potential romantic subplot in this game. I mean, it is Lumiose, based on the real-life City of Love, and Pokemon X and Y certainly did have some romantic subplots. Sadly, for those of us that like a challenge, they seem to be more of the friendly type of rivals, choosing the starter weak against our own. But these two might look a bit familiar too though, and at least personally they remind me the most of Crispin from the Scarlet and Violet DLC, even down to their outfits having similar colors to the Blueberry Academy uniform. But this could just be coincidence. Maybe they're just future Nurse Joys. And finally, we have this pair of definitely not bad guys, Jet and Vinny. This bougie old lady giving us the classic passive-aggressive face is the CEO of Quasartico, the corporation behind Lumiose's big redevelopment plan. We had previously seen this logo in the first trailer, and many fans even predicted it'd be related to the word quasar, which themselves are massive celestial objects that emit exceptionally large amounts of energy, not too unlike a certain ultimate weapon we know. So I wonder if Quasartico might have some other ultimate goal. The website only mentions Jet hoping to strengthen the bonds between people and Pokemon, which sounds pretty noble on paper. But honestly, it feels a bit too obvious pinning Jet here as the bad guy. I mean, evil CEO, as relatable as it may be in today's day and age, has been done in Pokemon before, so perhaps Jet here's just a red herring. Now, the man bun rockin' stud next to her is Vinny, her secretary. Though I have a feeling he does a lot more than just scheduling Jet's appointments, especially with those suspicious looking sideburns. Then again, he's got some pretty cute hair ties of Bunary and Pangoro holding up his hair, so could be that he's that typical rough on the outside but actually a big teddy bear on the inside kind of guy. But you may have also noticed his suspiciously green gloves and shoes. Is this guy just incredibly fashionable, or could he somehow be linked to Zygarde? It's not an exact same green as the one our character's wearing though, so maybe it's more of a link to Pangoro. Would be pretty sick if he had a Mega Pangoro as his main Pokemon. But speaking of good old squishy, Zygarde does actually make a brief appearance in this trailer, both as a Zygarde cell and in its 10% form. And though the trailer itself doesn't tell us much about what it's doing here, on the official Pokemon site we learned that Zygarde will apparently take a special interest in us and questions what its role could be in this story. I'm assuming this is referring to the dog form that we see. Maybe it joins our party early on in the story, and as we collect more Zygarde cells around the city, we can power it up to 50% and even complete form eventually. But there's one more familiar character hidden in this trailer. well, maybe not exactly hidden, but at least hinted at, as we see this familiar office towards the ending. Immediately you might be thinking everyone's favorite detective is back. No, not that one. But not Looker either, because after the events of X and Y, we know Looker was swallowed up by a wormhole and spit out in Alola. But he did leave behind a protege in Lumiose, one that you might remember was quite fond of the Pokemon Esper.
Mimi, wait! Stay away from her!
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up that trauma again, but if you played the X and Y post-game, you definitely remember Emma, the badass cyborg suit-wearing detective girl who at the end of the story basically took over the Looker Bureau. And I have no doubts at all, this is her office, so I'm very excited to see what role she might play in this new story, and what other characters from the original X and Y might show up. But that about covers everything we learned about the story so far, which means it's about time we get into the gameplay. I still cannot believe after a whole year of speculating on and playing multiple fan games with real-time Pokemon battles, they're actually making it official. And I feel like people have been the most divided about this choice in particular, saying Pokemon should have stayed turn-based forever. Which, like, I get it. Pokemon's battle system is one of the biggest reasons people keep coming back to the series. But like I mentioned at the beginning, it is extremely likely that this new battle system was built just for Pokemon Legends, and Gen 10 will go back to turn-based. I mean, Legends Arceus had real-time catching, but Scarlet and Violet didn't, so I for one am extremely happy they're trying out something new, cause Pokemon often gets criticized for quote-unquote making the same game over and over, which is obviously not that simple, but this new battle system is one way in which they can continue to evolve the franchise and bring back old players that got tired of the same old formula, or even attract new players that are more used to other action-heavy RPGs. So without further ado, let's break it down. And the first thing I should mention is that just like in Legends Arceus, in this game you can also catch Pokemon without battling. Some of them will be easy to just whack with a Pokeball, but others will quickly run away if they even catch a whiff of you. In which case, battling and weakening them first may be the better option. Now, I made sure to rewatch this part of the trailer dozens of times to make sure what I'm seeing is actually what it is, and I could still be slightly wrong, but it looks to me like Pokemon move in sync with you. They only showcase it a couple of times, but you can see here when the trainer moves left, the Pokemon also moves left. Meaning in order to dodge attacks, you basically just move your trainer in the direction you want your Pokemon to dodge and it'll follow. Of course, you can't win by just dodging, so eventually you gotta use some attacks of your own, and I can't really tell if they're mapped to the 4 main buttons on the Switch. I know the controls were one of the biggest issues in Legends Arceus, so hopefully they've made it simpler here. But either way, once you choose what move you want to use, it seems to go on a cooldown before you can use it again, with each move having a different cooldown likely depending on the power or usefulness of them. But it seems like attacks don't just come out immediately after you choose one. As you can see when this trainer clicks Water Gun, this circle appears on the floor and goes from your trainer to the Pokemon. And only when the circle actually reaches your Pokemon does it begin to use its attack. There is another instance though where the circle appears to stay still and wait for Onix to reach it instead. So it's possible this could be how the speed stat works, like maybe the faster your Pokemon is, the faster that circle will reach it, and therefore the faster it can launch out attacks. But this still leaves the question of how things like evasiveness or accuracy raising moves could work. But we do at least get to see how one move is totally different in this game, and that is Stealth Rocks, which instead of being an entry hazard, seems to be more like a field hazard that enemies get hurt by if they physically make contact with them, sort of like in the anime. Now that I think about it, Dodge has always been the most OP move in the Pokemon anime, and now we can actually use it in the games? And yes, it seems like NPCs will also be able to dodge as we see the rival move to the side and his Pokemon follows. So battles won't be as simple as just dodging enemies and spamming moves, as you'll have to time your own attacks to make sure the enemy doesn't dodge too. One more thing I noticed about battling wild Pokemon though, is when you drop their HP to 0, it seems the Pokemon now gets stunned, giving you a chance to still catch it. Now this is of course unlike any other Pokemon game, where in battle if you knock out a Pokemon you no longer get a chance to catch it. So I wonder what would happen if the Pokeball fails here. Does the Pokemon stay stunned, giving you another chance? Or maybe it regains a little bit of health and gets to retaliate? Guess we'll have to wait for the next trailer to find out. But there's one more feature we need to talk about, and that is, of course, Mega Evolutions. To many people's surprise, they actually didn't show off any new Mega Evolutions. And the ones we did see appear to be a little different, at least in terms of gameplay, which of course they are, because we have a totally new battle system. Now, the website specifically mentions that in order to Mega Evolve, a Pokemon needs to be holding their corresponding Mega Stone, which kind of sounds like held items might return. But unfortunately, we can't confirm if abilities are returning because pretty much every enemy against a Mega Evolution gets one shot in the trailer. The trailer does mention that besides for changing appearance, Mega Evolved Pokemon of course become stronger, but I'm not so sure that it's gonna be a stat increase. In all three examples we see in this trailer, it almost looks more like the Pokemon's moves are powered up, with this plus symbol appearing next to them. And this same symbol appears next to all of their moves, so I wonder if in this game Megas don't get increased stats and instead just get powered up moves. As always, if you guys have any theories or caught something I may have missed, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But even though there were no new Mega Evolutions shown, we did get to see a lot of returning Mega Evolving Pokemon. Not just like literally their Mega Evolutions, but also the unevolved Pokemon like Larvitar and Bagon, Pidgeot of course, which got absolutely blasted. And on the website, we even see more like Mega Houndoom. So I think it's safe to assume that most, if not all, the Mega Evolutions from past games will return. And even the ones that don't appear specifically in this game will at least seemingly be usable in the other new game Pokemon announced today, Pokémon Champions. Basically, in case you missed it, this new spin-off game will be focused purely on the battling experience with a connection to Pokemon Home. Even if it isn't a full-on Pokemon Showdown style simulator, it is confirmed that Mega Evolutions will be usable within this game in combination with terastallization, which just sounds awesome for competitive battling. Like, future tournaments are going to be insane, and does at least settle one of my biggest worries with Legends Z-A introducing new Mega Evolutions, because most likely, even if they don't have abilities here in Legends Z-A, when you can eventually transfer them to Pokemon Home and then to this new Champions game, they're going to have all the typical turn-based stuff you expect. So I am incredibly excited to see what new Mega Evolutions eventually get revealed. I'm not too surprised that they didn't show any off in this specific trailer. I mean, I thought maybe we'd get a couple, but considering how big of a shock the new battle system is, yeah, I can kind of see why they chose to just focus on that. But of course, the trailer ends off with one last teaser. And this is the one there will no doubt be the most theories about. We basically see Rotom Phone, much like the one in Scarlet and Violet. In fact, it makes the exact same sound effect. And on it pops up a message saying a promotion match announcement, followed by what appears to be the Prism Tower, which in Pokemon X and Y was the electric type gym. But because this game takes place solely within Lumiose, I find it very unlikely that they'd have only one gym battle, so I think the Prism Tower will have a different role. And at least my personal theory would be that we might just see the return of the Pokemon World Tournament. At this point, the World Tournament is ancient. Like, that was Pokemon Black and White too. But basically, you'd have trainers from every previous generation and game coming together in one post-game battle tower-esque, well, tournament. I guess Pokemon Sword and Shield also had something similar with the Galarian Star Tournament, except there weren't characters from past generations. But the reason I'm thinking that's what they're teasing is because in the Pokemon Journeys anime, they did have a world tournament of sorts. I forgot what it's called, the Coronation Series or something. But anytime there would be a big match to rank up, they would call it a promotion match, which is the exact same wording they use here. At the end of that anime, we saw trainers from all over the world, every region, come together in the Masters 8 tournament. So maybe, just maybe, they're bringing the Masters tournament into the game. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already to stay tuned, because I'll be making plenty more theory videos about how Legends Z-A could change the future of Pokemon forever.